Today we're going to take a look at specifying electrical enclosures.
Could call them electrical boxes, Gordon.
You call them what you want, Gary, but we're going to be using this range from HYLEC, this DE box range, to help us on our journey to look at some of those important factors. And let me tell you, it's a massive range, so they start from some small enclosures through to large plastic enclosures and even some exotic materials such as stainless steel that we've got behind us.
The electrician's going to always pose questions, so I'm going to pose them to you, Gordon. We're going to be thinking, what is it going to be used for? What environment is it going into? How are we going to mount it? And what is going to go inside the electrical enclosure in order to make the electrician's life easier? You need to answer those, Gordon.
Yeah, well, I'll try my best, Gary. It's an iterative process, but let me give you a top tip first, because you choose an enclosure, you've got to think, yes, what's going in there? PLC, power supply, some circuit protection, DIN rail terminals, and you'd probably carefully work that out. And my sort of rule of thumb is, whenever I've finished a project, I've always thought I actually chose a box that was probably one size too small.
Okay, so you've moved that one. I would suggest you probably specified this size box, and in real terms, Gordon, you probably wanted one at this size.
Yeah, and obviously, so apologies to anybody who's ever had to fit an enclosure where I've somehow been involved in the design of that. Yeah, you probably struggled to get everything wired in.
So first of all then, so we're going to pick the enclosure that's big enough for what we're going to be doing. But there's other things to consider. We talked about environment and impact and stuff like that. Where do you want to go next, Gordon?
Yeah, I mean, environment's often one of the first key parameters in there in a number of ways, really. So we think about IP ratings. And this range from HYLEC goes from IP65 up to IP68.
Right, okay.
Now, obviously, that, if it's outside, or depend on the application inside, that can have an impact on the IP rating.
And we fitted an enclosure outside of here, didn't we, at the studios, because we needed to increase the amount of room for terminations, and we chose a box from HYLEC. Do you want to see that, Gordon? So we used one of our HYLEC enclosures as well as our eFIXX glands on this camera outside the unit. We used it because we needed to extend the terminating area in order that we could make the connections for the camera, and obviously we've got the IP rating appropriate for being used outside as well, Gordon.
Yeah, and that's outside, so that's an IP66 enclosure. I'd suggest it's not going to get that many high pressure jets of water out there, but it's perfectly suitable for the environment. And we even paired it up with some of these quick fit glands that we've seen in a previous video. If you check that out, they're good.
They are good, that's why we used them. So that matching it to the environment, and we used it from an IP rating point of view, but obviously there's areas where impact comes into it. What's the impact rating?
Yeah, so again, depending on the product you pick in the range, you have IK ratings that go from 8 all the way up to 10. So IK08 protected against 5 joules impact. Well, what does that mean in the real world? Equivalent to an impact of 1.7 kilograms of mass dropped from 300 millimeters above the impacted surface. And a flip to IK10, similar scenario, 20 joules of impact. Well, that's equivalent to 5 kilograms of mass dropped from 400 millimeters above the impacted surface. So what we say is really the higher the number, the better in this case.
Okay, thank you for that. So suitable finishes would be where I'd go next, matching that to the environment as well, Gordon.
Yeah, so obviously that'll lead you down the route of a plastic enclosure. So that again depends what's in the environment. Is it going to be subject to UV, or is it going to be subject to some chemicals? So there's this range in ABS or polycarbonate, depending on the size of the enclosure. Right. And obviously then you can choose whether it has a clear door or an opaque door.
Okay.
And obviously at the other end of the range, we've got the stainless steel range here, which this, technical bit, 3 or 4 grade stainless steel.
And what does that mean?
Well, okay, that's the most common grade of stainless steel around. It's the sort of things you'd probably find your kitchen sink made from.
Right, okay.
The alternative is a marine grade stainless steel available at a special order, but that's for, that's a 316 grade, but again, that's for probably a very high-end specification, probably somewhere that's going to be quite aggressive chemicals or particularly salt water, hence the marine.
Okay, let's talk about doors next. So this door here is clear, okay, and this door here in the metallic enclosure has the earth lead on it. So there are 2 things that we're going to discuss next. Why clear door?
Well, clear door, so you're thinking, do you need visual indication without having to open it up? So you might have some indicator lights. Obviously, there's 2 ways, couldn't you? You could bring an indicator light and mount it on the panel.
Yes.
But obviously that means more holes to drill, more holes, more chances to, somehow impact that IP rating. So a clear door might be the choice. You might have a PLC in there. They might have some other equipment where you want to read a display. So a clear door option can be good.
Okay, and the earth lead here, this is something we really like, didn't we? So in all their metallic enclosures, they earth the front door for you, don't they?
Yeah, it comes, and that's what we found with this range from HYLEC, that everything seems to be included that you might need. And that extends to, obviously, yes, you mentioned the earth tag there, Gary, but also including the gear tray.
Yeah, in both of these, yeah.
Both options. some external mounting tabs
Yes.
as well, so that helps you with the with obviously the mounting of all the keys and all the accessories. So a lot of enclosures you find, you've got to order those as separate bits, and you tend to forget.
And you only find out you've forgotten when you go to mount it and think, well, I wanted the external fixings.
Yeah, and that also extends to even the smaller range of boxes. You can specify them with a length of DIN rail
Okay.
already mounted in there. So this is probably good for DIN rail terminals, circuit breakers, but you possibly wouldn't put a circuit breaker in that box, Gary. Why is that?
Well, you want the circuit breaker in there
Yeah.
because you'd have to obviously undo the enclosure to reset it, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay, but there is lots of different mounting positions in there, Gordon. So as you look in there, there is loads of different ways in which you can mount that DIN rail, not just necessarily in the position we mounted it in. So again, they're thinking about the versatility of that enclosure as well. So are there any other considerations for the equipment going inside the enclosure, Gordon?
Okay, so again, it's that choice between plastic or metal normally, and the impact of what equipment going in there can have an impact on it. So I would suggest if it's possibly something that needs wireless communication to it, it's not a good idea to put that in a metal box. And just remember also the metal range comes in a painted finish, galvanised underneath but painted on top. Or obviously the plastic range, but then, you know, again, the weight of the equipment in there. So a lot of times you'll have a control panel with a heavy low voltage transformer in there as well. That might push you back in the direction of a metal enclosure.
We could say that HYLEC have got it covered. We've only got a sample of the enclosures they've got in front of us, haven't we, Gordon?
We've even got a pre-drilled one here, Gary, to look at where you might put some standard push buttons, and we're going to look at that in another video.
Yeah, you're sneaking into the next one. That's why we've got these down here as well. We're going into the controls that HYLEC also offer. As always, we're interested in your comments, okay? What type of enclosures are you fitting? What type of enclosures do you choose in certain conditions? Have you got a go-to enclosure or manufacturer? Are you using the range from HYLEC at the moment? And what's your feedback on that range? As always, leave those comments below and we'll try and get back to as many as we can.